an always-on marketing ecosystem that demands we tweet almost continuously, reply to every single email, and be constantly available. Finding the space and the time to write a book isn't necessarily the most easy thing to do. So I'm here with Lucy Green, who is the worldwide director of the Innovation Group at J. Walter Thompson and the author of Silicon States, to find out how on earth you write a book and how you go about building your personal brand. So Lucy, some of us, myself included, can't even get to our email inbox. How do you find the space to write a book?
So I saw it as an investment in myself, so I spent my weekends and evenings and also devoted the majority of my paid holiday leave to it, in addition to J. Walter Thompson giving me a short sabbatical to write the first draft. So it was a big investment of free time, lie-ins, parties. I gave up Christmas. I gave up Christmas to write the first draft. So yeah, it was an investment.
And as a woman writing in a very male-dominated space, the tech sphere is not necessarily known for being the most diverse. And it's the same in advertising. When you look at the books surrounding advertising, a lot of them, books like The Branded Gent, they're very male-dominated, very much upholding a status quo and reinforcing it. I mean, could you talk a bit about how you found your voice as a woman in a very male-dominated space?
Yeah, I mean, well, there's two things. There's my voice and also the way that the book is kind of executed. So it was really important to me to include, it actually ended up instinctively including a lot of women, because I found that when you look at not just the tech world, but who's reporting on the tech world, it's largely white men. And so I made a point of giving a voice to a lot of women in this book, because I found actually what they were saying was kind of a perspective that you don't often hear, and was actually quite candid, and I just found it very interesting. As also a former journalist, it was an interesting process writing a book which is supposed to be about like my opinion and me, the expert. Whereas, as you know, as a journalist, when you're interviewing people for journalism, you're seeking, or you're putting the expert outside of yourself. So that was kind of a process. But I had a really good editor at Counterpoint Press, Dan Smetanka, who worked with me on doing that. And what was great is that I just really trusted him. So I was able to sort of experiment, and he would tell me what worked and what didn't. And I became sort of bolder and bolder the more time went on working with him back and forth.
And you obviously work in the innovation division. You have a lot of research that you do, and a real sort of understanding of how the market's shifting. We talk a lot about, it's a horrible term, but personal brand, and how to build your personal brand. And you're somebody that maybe has both sides of that, because you're building your own personal brand, but you also have an understanding of how different cohorts in the workplace have different expectations.
Yeah.
I mean, what's your view in terms of how can women today, but also tomorrow for the next generation, how can they build their personal brand within companies? I mean, what advice would you give?
I think they're just already doing it, and it's not just women, it's kind of young people generally. I mean, when I think about people on my team and younger people that I work with in New York, everyone has a podcast, everyone has a side hustle, everyone is creating content, has a blog, has, to some degree already becoming some sort of media creator or doing something entrepreneurial. I think it's just a reality of the way young people in particular are living and operating, and so it's just going to become something that companies need to adapt to. It's, when I think about it also now, people's influence and their following is part and parcel with their resume now for when they get their next job. So it's becoming intertwined with your professional standing to have influence to some degree.
And in terms of building that influence through writing a book, coming out of this, the other side with the book, what advice would you give to people who have an idea but they maybe don't have the contacts or the know-how of where to start?
I would say seek out someone who has already done it, because it's not as mysterious or complicated as you think, although there are stages that it's great to have an author help you a fellow author help you navigate. But really, it's essentially about putting together a book almost like a business plan. You're trying to persuade a publisher that it's a credible idea, that is sellable. I mean, ultimately, it's a commercial industry and something unique. And you're also trying to convince them that, or make a case for yourself being able to market it. So it's not just about the idea, it's about how you present it as something interesting and compelling to a publisher. But beyond that, it's not that complex. So I think it's helpful to have people who have done it before who can guide you through that.
And obviously you're in the New York office, but we are at JWT London today, where the median pay gap is an eye-watering 44.7%. Obviously, I'm not going to ask you to comment on that, but I did want to get a view from you on how to negotiate, like the negotiation side of whether it's negotiating time to write a book, or whether it's negotiating with your employer to get you a better profile, to get you on platforms and conferences. What tips would you give to people seeking to build their own personal brand but perhaps not knowing how?
I think just embrace a sense of agency. It's really easy to feel, imposter syndrome is like a sort of cliche term, but very real at the same time. So take yourself seriously, take what you're asking seriously. And I think increasingly, beyond salary, people are looking for other ways or other rewards that from being able to work for charity as part of their work on an interesting project as part of their work, or have more time off. Like, I think actually the way particularly millennials are framing ambition is slightly shifting, and symbols of success are also shifting. So ask for what you want.